Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to our Hanafi fiqh class. We're doing the kitab known as I'ala Sunan of Maulana Zafar Ahmad Thanvi rahimahullah. And tonight, inshallah ta'ala, we are continuing on from the chapter with regards to wiping over the khuffain. So we are reading from hadith number 317 on page 345. So let us begin. Bismillah walhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillahi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. So he continues, he starts, he says, hadith number 317. حدثنا الحنفي عن أبي عامر الخزاز حدثنا الحسن عن المغيرة ابن شعبة رضي الله عنه قال رأيت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بالا ثم جاء حتى توضأ ومسح على خفيه. I'll read it bit by bit. Imam al-Hanafi, who he is, you'll see shortly. He narrates from Imam Abu Amir al-Khazzaz, from Imam Hassan al-Basri, from Hadrat Mughira ibn Shu'ba radiyallahu anhu, who said, I saw Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam bala. Bala refers to urinate. So I saw that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam had gone to relieve himself. حتى ثم جاء, and after having relieved himself, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam came. حتى توضأ, النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم performed wudu ومسح على خفيه, and Nabi صلى الله عليه وسلم wiped his خفين ووضع يده اليمنى على خفه الأيمن, and Nabi صلى الله عليه وسلم put his right hand on his right خف ويده اليسرى على خفه الأيسر, and Nabi صلى الله عليه وسلم put his left hand on his left خف ثم مسح أعلاهما مسحة واحدة, then Nabi صلى الله عليه وسلم wiped both of them one wipe. حتى أنظر إلى أصابع رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم على الخفين. He says, so much so that I could see the fingerprints. The asabi' means fingers, but here in this case, the traces of the fingers of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam on the khuffain. Now, I want to point out one aspect over here before we actually go further, which is, how do you wipe over the khuffain? Do you wipe one right foot then left foot, or right foot and left foot together? The short answer is both ways would be valid. You see, it also comes down to the reading of the hadith here, which was ثم مسح أعلاهما مسحة واحدة. مسحة واحدة, both of them were wiped once, meaning it can mean that one was wiped once and one was wiped once, and it can also mean that both of them were wiped together. The words can give both meanings. Hence why you find both opinions existing amongst the ulama. So if you were making your masah on your khuffain and you wiped your right foot, then your left foot, no problem. And if you wiped your right foot and your left foot, then too, no problem. Both of them are acceptable. That's number one. Now, what you will find amongst, how do you wipe beyond that point, which is, we say you wipe with your fingers. So hence why you see here, he says, I saw the imprints of the fingers of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam on the khuffain. So we say you take 3 fingers. You take 3 fingers and you wipe the fingers from the tip of your toes right up till above your ankle. You know, like you know generally the height of the khuf. So you basically take it right up. You don't have to go right up your leg, but you get the picture. It is, some people may take it and then they take it only till the bone of the tarsal, as it's called, the bone on the top of your foot. Then you're not actually covering your entire foot that you should. So therefore, to do a proper masah, start it from the tip of your toes and pull your hand backwards till the top of your khuf. Like I say, I don't mean literally the top of the khuf, but you get the picture till the back, till you've reached above your ankle part, so to speak. Then you know you've covered your whole foot. Now, some people may take the palm of their hand, and yes, maybe other ulama hold a different viewpoint in this regard. So you'll find some, and I've seen this amongst Salafis, so they will take now their palm and they wipe with the palm of their hand up their foot like that. So, you know, whatever the case may be, from a Hanafi perspective, we say you take 3 fingers. So you take your 3 fingers and you slide those 3 wet fingers over the top of your khuf. So like I say, whether you are doing both feet at once or you are doing the right foot, then the left foot, in both cases, both of these ways will be acceptable. So I remembered last week we hadn't touched on the method per se. So I just thought, let me just mention it tonight anyway. So that is with regards to wiping on the khuf. And yeah, let's carry on. He says, رواه ابن أبي شيبة في مصنفه كما في نصب الراية. He says Imam Ibn Abi Shayba reports it in his Musannaf, the Musannaf of Imam Ibn Abi Shayba, rahimahullah. He says this is mentioned in Nasb al-Raya fi takhrij ahadith al-hidayah of Imam Az-Zayla'i, rahimahullah. He says, قلت Mulana Zafar Ahmad Thanvi, he says, رجاله رجال الجماعة. The narrators in this hadith are the narrators found in the Jama'ah. I explained this last week as well, which refers to the 6 famous books of hadith. Well, Hanafi. Now, who is the Hanafi that we're talking about here? The Hanafi, don't mean he is a Hanafi from the Hanafi madhab, but rather is from the tribe of Banu Hanifa. So he is either Abdul Kabir ibn Abdul Majid al-Hanafi or his brother Ubaidullah ibn Abdul Majid al-Hanafi, meaning one of the 2 brothers. So, let me put it to you this way. You find, for example, in the hadith narrated by Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, for example. Now, it could be Hadrat Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, and it could be Hadrat Fadl ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma. But 99.99999% of the time, it will be Hadrat Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma. Hence why the term is synonymous with him when we just say Ibn Abbas. But nonetheless, so here it was mentioned just that Imam al-Hanafi said so. And it was not clarified which of the 2 brothers it is. But Mulana Zafar Ahmad, he says, وَكُلُّ مِنْهُمَا ثِقَةٌ مِنْ رِجَالِ الْجَمَاعَةِ. Okay, he says, but regardless of which one, whether it is Ubaidullah or Abdul Karim, any one of the 2, yeah, Abdul Kabir, not Abdul Karim, Abdul Kabir or Ubaidullah, whichever one of the 2 it is, it's neither you nor they. Why? Because وَكُلُّ مِنْهُمَا ثِقَةٌ. Both of them are thiqa, they trustworthy, reliable narrators. Min rijal al-jama'a. Imam Bukhari, Imam Muslim, Tirmidhi, Abu Dawud, Nasai, and Ibn Majah report a hadith from both of them. All 6 report a hadith from both of them. So therefore, regardless of whether it is 6 or half a dozen, at the end of the day, both brothers are reliable. So whichever one of the 2 it is, it's 100% fine. وقال في التلخيص الحبير بعد نقل هذا الحديث ورواه البيهقي من طريق الحسن عن المغيرة بنحوه وهو منقطع. He says Imam Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani rahimahullah mentions in At-Talkhis al-Habir after mentioning this hadith, he says Imam Bayhaqi rahimahullah reports it from the way of Imam al-Hasan, meaning Imam Hasan al-Basri, from Hadrat Mughira radiyallahu anhu in a like manner. But he says وَهُوَ مُنْقَطِعٌ. But the chain of narration is منقطع, meaning there's somebody missing in the chain. قلت يعني بين الحسن البصري وبين المغيرة رضي الله عنه وهو غير مضر عندنا والبصري إمام قدوة. He says that Mulana Zafar, he comments now, he says that the way this cut in the chain is found, where the missing link is, the missing link is between Imam Hassan al-Basri and Hadrat Mughira ibn Shu'bah radiallahu anhu, because Imam Hassan al-Basri never heard the hadith from Hadrat Mughira radiallahu anhu. So obviously, who he heard from is not mentioned, and that is the way the inqita', the cut in the chain comes in. But he says, this type of inqita' is not an issue as far as we are concerned from a Hanafi perspective. And Imam Hassan Basri is an imam qudwa. He's an imam to be followed. In the sign, and I've spoken about this before in the past, that when you have a mursal, and I've spoken about mursal at length over the previous classes, from a Hanafi perspective, mursal, with certain criteria, but the Hanafi and the Maliki madhab, the early A'imma, everyone prior to the time of Imam Ash-Shafi'i rahimahullah, in simple terms, they had no issue accepting a mursal narration. But anyway, nonetheless, so the Marasil of Imam Hassan al-Basri is not a problem, the meaning the mursal narrations of Imam Hassan al-Basri. So therefore, the fact that Imam Hassan al-Basri didn't mention who he heard it from, that had heard it from Hadrat Mughira radiallahu anhu, from us, for us as Hanafis, we say this doesn't harm the narration at all, because he was reliable, he took from people who was reliable, so the one he left out is reliable. He wasn't somebody quoting from every Tom, Paul, and Harry. So therefore, the person that he missed out is a reliable, trustworthy person. So what it's like, for example, a Sahabi said, who's the Sahabi? I don't know. narration is 100% authentic because all of the الصحابة كلهم عدول. All of the Sahaba radiallahu anhu are trustworthy and reliable. So it's that similar principle being used. So he says Imam Hassan al-Basri, he's an imam. He's somebody to be followed. So if he had left out somebody like this here, then it doesn't affect the authenticity of the narration. But in any case, so that covers now the wiping on the khuf itself. Now we move on to the next point, which is Babul Mashi al Jurmuqaini, the chapter regarding Masah on the Jurmuq. What is the Jurmuq? Let's read the hadith shortly. حديث number 318 عن بلال رضي الله عنه أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم مسح على الموقين والخمار أي على عمامة. رواه ابن خزيمة في صحيحه كما قال الزيلعي رحمه الله. Okay, so this chapter is regarding Jurmuqain. Another word for it is Muqain. Muqain, Jurmuqain, both of them are synonyms of one another. What it basically means is like a shoe, as we would call it here now. It is something that you wear over your khuf. And in our terms today, we would say that is your shoe. So let me read the narration and till the end, and then I'll come back to explaining the mas'ala. So Hadrat Bilal radiallahu anhu, he said that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam wiped over his muqain, which we would translate now as shoes, but wait till I explain it, over his shoes, wal khimar. Now, you know, generally the word khimar refers to a scarf, but obviously Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam was not wearing a scarf, nor was Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam wearing the shemar, ghutra, Palestinian scarf, call it whatever you want to call it by, and that never existed. There's a Bedouin thing that the Saudis and them came up with in latter years, and the Palestinian one cut or the colors and stuff like that. There's a whole history behind that, but nonetheless, that's now modernistic things, got nothing to do with the Sunnah at all. So here he says that it's a turban. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam wiped his shoes and his turban, as the narration mentions, but we did touch on the topic of wiping over the turban previously. So I'm going to read the hadith finish and then I'm going to explain everything. So Imam Ibn Khuzaymah rahimahullah reports this hadith in his Sahih Ibn Khuzaymah. His student is Imam Ibn Hibban al-Busti. He is the Sahih Ibn Hibban. So this is the teacher Imam Ibn Khuzaymah rahimahullah. He narrates this hadith in his Sahih. He says Imam al-Zayla'i rahimahullah mentions this as well. وعنه أيضا, and also he mentions قال رأيت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يمسح على الموقين والخمار. رواه أحمد والضياء المقدسي في المختارة كما في نيل الأوطار. قلت إسناد المختارة صحيح على قاعدة كنز العمال. Okay, so he says, furthermore, another narration mentions, I saw Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam wiping over the muqain and the khimar, the shoes and the turban. Imam Ahmad rahimahullah reports it, and Imam al-Diya al-Maqdisi rahimahullah in al-Mukhtara, as is mentioned by Imam al-Shawkani in Nail al-Awtar. Now Maulana Zafar Ahmad Tanvi says the chain of narration of the Mukhtara of Imam al-Diya al-Maqdisi rahimahullah is authentic according to the principles of Kanzul Ummal. Kanzul Ummal is the famous kitab by Imam Muttaqi al-Hindi. So in other words, according to the criteria of Imam Muttaqi al-Hindi, the chain of narration found in al-Mukhtara is authentic. In other words, shortly put, the narration is authentic. So that there being said, now we come to the understanding of the hadith. So we have established now, fine, the hadith exists there. But now how does this fit in with the masail that we have? And that is starting from the top. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam wiping over shoes. Now, how would this work in today's world? In today's world, there are many different types of shoes. Now you have shoes, let's put it this way, gum boots, let's put it this way. So you have gum boots, totally waterproof, things like this here, no issue with it. You have certain types of slip-on boots, for example, things of the sort. Even some lace ones which are tied so tightly because it's work boots and things of this sort. So it is tied so tightly that you can literally put your foot in water and nothing will pass through because it's of that nature. Obviously, if you're wearing of those material type shoes where you just touch your hand on it and or the little bit of raindrops fall on it and it soaks through, then that wouldn't count. But nonetheless, if your shoe, it fits like the criteria of a gumboot, you know, you can jump in puddles of water, nothing's passing through that gumboot. So in a like manner, if you have shoes which are of that sort of a nature, and you now made masah upon it, then you would be deemed as having your wudu. So let's put it this way. And there's two things I want to touch on this point here at least. I know I'm digressing a lot, but since we are doing fiqh over here, it's necessary to explain such masail. So coming to the issue of wiping over the shoe. Now, if your shoe is, like I say, it fits the criteria of being like a gum boot, that it's solid, it's waterproof, you can wipe over it, no water is passing through it, you know all those criteria that the khuffain have, it meets all of that, so there's not an issue in that regard. Now you've wiped over it, fine, your wudu is intact. So now if you were to pick up the Mus'ab, the Quran, and you read like that, touching the Quran, no problem, because you're in a state of wudu. Question comes in now, performing salah in that manner. That is where the issue comes in, because while it is fine in this that you are in a state of wudu, but you cannot wear such shoes for salah where you are unable to perform the arkan correctly. So when you are supposed to go into sajda, you are supposed to be bending your feet, bending your toes specifically to point towards the qibla. But now your gum boots is so thick, heavy, solid that you can't bend your foot. So in other words, you're standing on your toes and you're not bending your feet the way you are supposed to. So some people do it because they cannot bend their shoes, and some people don't want to harm their shoes, you know, because they have their nice shoes that they're wearing, so they don't want to damage the shoe by bending it. So in this sort of situation over here, in this type of case, they should not be performing salah like this. They should take the shoes off, wash their feet, and then perform their salah. But if they are having such shoes which can, let's put it this way, that they can perform salah correctly, that they can bend their foot fully in sajda, everything of the sort like this here, and they are doing it for a reason, then it will be acceptable. It should not be done unnecessarily. For example, you out, for example, in a place where there's, let's say there's glass, for example, broken glass around and things like this here, and the place is generally of this sort of thing, so you don't have a clean place where you can stand, where it's safe to stand without your shoes on. Or maybe, for example, let's take it as being literal gum boots, and the floor is now covered with water. So now you don't exactly want to get your feet wet, because if you take your shoes off, you're going to be standing 3 inches deep in water. So you thought, hey, you know what, I'll wear my gum boots, but I'll bend my feet and everything in salah, because it's such, let's put it this way, soft gum boots enough to be able to bend. So in that case, if there was a valid reason behind it and it meets the criteria, then you could perform your salah even in while wearing that. But if not, then fine, your wudu is intact, and for reading Quran and so on and so forth. But if you are unable to perform your salah with it, then you must remove it, wash your feet, and make your salah correctly. So that's with regards to that issue. I think that was about it with regards to the shoes. Now coming back to the issue, the khimar, the wiping over the turban. Now we have established that the hadith is authentic, but as you can remember, some time back, we, under the chapters of wudu, we passed by the chapter of regarding of making masah over the turban, and we said that it is not valid anymore to wipe over the turban, and that there is no wiping over the turban or for a woman to wipe over her scarf in any case. So how do we say that if we then have just said that this hadith is authentic? The answer lies in the fact that what exactly does the hadith mean? So the ulama, when they've explained this, and I've explained it back in the day when we did that chapter, they explained that the narrator narrates it from a distance. So he thought from, when you stand at the distance and you see Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was wearing a turban, making wudu, and he sees that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam does not take the turban off to put it down on the side and make wudu, but rather Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam wears the turban during wudu. So he assumes, if he's Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam touching by the turban, so he assumes Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam wiped the turban. So the ulama explained the same, no. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam did not wipe the turban. Rather, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam shifted the turban slightly and put his hand underneath the turban and wiped that way. But from a distance, when you're seeing, you still see that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam is wearing a turban. But you didn't really notice that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam lifted it slightly and put a wet hand underneath and wiped his nasiyah. And that was the narration that we did by ala nasiyatihi, that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam wiped his forelock. So that's how we explain that, yes, hadith is authentic. Like you have many authentic ahadith, but ahadith are understood through other ahadith, the context behind it. Thus we say, even though we will say that the hadith is authentic, but we do not derive from this that you can wipe over a turban or a scarf, etc., on the basis of this hadith, because there are others that say, no, you cannot, because that wasn't what was done. So therefore, in short, with regards to this hadith, where we touched it on the point of making masah over your shoes, if your shoes meet such criteria that that it is waterproof, etc., 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 and you are wiping over it, then yes, you would be deemed as having wudu. And if you have such shoes that you can perform your salah with, then you would have wudu for salah as well. If you cannot perform salah properly in it, then you should not perform your salah with that shoes on. Take it off, wash your feet with the full wudu, a proper one time, and then you can perform your salah without a problem. But nonetheless, that is how the ruling would work. So yes, if you are a person and you're wearing your normal cotton socks, or maybe you're not even wearing socks at all, or maybe you're wearing those sports socks or secret socks or whatever they want to call those sort of things. Now you're wearing that and you're wearing this gumboot, for example. I'm going with gumboot because it's the most easily identifiable thing. So you're wearing your gumboot with this no sock on, in other words. Now you're wiping over it. It's fine. If you have khuffain on and then a gumboot, then too it's fine. So, you can put it this way. If you wore your khuffain in a gumboot and then you found yourself in this situation, you could take off your gumboot, wipe over your khuffain, and then put your khuffain back in the gumboot. Then if you get out of it, you've got wudu. I mean, one way or the other. And yes, then when your 24 hours are up as a muqim, then you have to take off your khuffain and wash your feet, and the rest as the masail go accordingly. But that being said, that's with regards to the shoe. And like I said, with regards to the turban, we say it wasn't actually on the turban itself, but the turban was shifted slightly and wiped underneath it. So that's the ruling with regards to those two things. Moving on to the next hadith before our time runs out for the night. Number 319 عن أبي عبد الله عن أبي عبد الرحمن أنه شهد عبد الرحمن بن عوف رضي الله عنه يسأل بلالا عن وضوء النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال. Abu Abdullah narrates from Abu Abdurrahman that he witnessed Hadrat Abdurrahman ibn Auf radiyallahu anhu asking Hadrat Bilal radiyallahu anhu about the wudu of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So Hadrat Bilal radiyallahu anhu, he said, كان يخرج يقضي حاجته فآتيه بالماء فيتوضأ ويمسح على عمامته وموقيه. رواه أبو داود في سننه وسكت عنه، ورواه الحاكم في المستدرك وصححه، ورواه ابن خزيمة في صحيحه كما قال الزيلعي. Okay, so here you have another relation which says that Hadrat Bilal ibn Rabah radiyallahu anhu, he said, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam used to go out yaqdi hajatahu, meaning to relieve himself. فآتيه بالماء, and I would come now with the water. فيتوضأ, and Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam would make wudu. ويمسح على عمامته وموقيه, and Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam used to wipe over his turban and his shoes. Imam Abu Dawud rahimahullah reports this hadith in his Sunan, and he keeps silent, meaning by him keeping silent, it's his way of saying that the narration is authentic. Imam Hakim rahimahullah narrates it in his Mustadrak, and he grades it as being authentic. And Imam Ibn Khuzaymah rahimahullah also narrates it in his Sahih, deeming it to be authentic as well. This is mentioned by Imam Zayla'i rahimahullah. Now here we have not a narrator narrating from a distance, but rather somebody narrating from up front, because he say, I did it and I brought the water. So I was standing there literally when I saw Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam doing this. So some ulama, what they have said is that yes, there was a time when you could make masah over a turban, but then it is not, afterward it was abrogated. So that's one opinion. Others say that no, even though the narration may be authentic, but it does not override the mutawatir, or at least I should say, doesn't override the Quran. So the Quran, the the ayah of wudu in Surah Al-Ma'idah, the فَاغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ إِلَى الْمَرَافِقِ وَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ وَأَرْجُلَكُمْ إِلَى الْكَعْبَيْنِ. That ayah says wipe your head, so it doesn't mean wipe anything else. So from usul al-fiqh, you say, the Hanafi madhab says you cannot do ziyada on the Quran with the khabri wahid. You cannot, bring a law which contradicts something in the Quran on the basis of a khabri wahid, meaning a chain of narration which has, one chain. It's not mutawatir, it's khabri wahid. So in other words, this is khabri wahid. So you cannot make ziyada on the Quran. So according to a usuli fiqh perspective, this narration would not be suitable to override the command of the Quran of wiping your head. So we say the Quran comes first. This narration would not, the wiping on the turban would not be acceptable. So that's first point. Now we say, but can you make jama' between the two? Meaning, without rejecting the hadith, can we find an interpretation for the hadith that would make it possible for us to still accept it without rejecting it? So we say, yes, we do find such a ta'wil. The ta'wil and the tafsir is, as was mentioned previously, that it was either it was mansukh, so we say, fine, the hadith is authentic, we don't have a problem with it, that part is mansukh, abrogated. Or we say, number two, it was, once again, Hazrat Bilal may have brought the water, but maybe he went away at a distance, and when you assuming and Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you think that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam wiped over his turban because the turban was not removed. So we will make the interpretation in that way, whichever, the different ways of making jama' bain al-riwayati wal Quran, to bring harmony between the ayah of the Quran and the hadith, so that the hadith is not rejected, in other words. Because from a Hanafi perspective, the Quran is the first source of Sharia, and you cannot override the Quran except with something which is equal to it. So an ayah of the Quran for an ayah of the Quran, an ayah of the Quran with something which is mutawatir, because the Quran is mutawatir, things on that level. So when you have a khabri wahid, meaning it's something which exists with only one chain, then it cannot compare with something of the Quran. Now from a Hanafi perspective, from a usul al-fiqh and all those sort of stuff, it tends to go over the head of some people who don't understand how much emphasis the Hanafi madhab puts on hadith. Some people think, it's you ashabul ra'i, you people of opinion. Far from it. The Hanafi madhab places the strictest conditions on acceptance of hadith, and puts even stricter that we have to follow every single last thing of the Quran as far as is possible in that manner. So therefore, the hadith has to correspond with the Quran, and the hadith which thus contradicts the ayah of the Quran would not be accepted for that reason until and unless, and which we do say, we have other proofs. So thus we make jama' between the Quran and the hadith, and we say it means this here, to wipe under the turban without removing it from your head. You tilt it back a little bit, you put your hand in underneath. Somebody standing at the distance would see it as if you were wiping your turban, but nonetheless you were actually wiping your hair itself. And that's how we would understand the hadith. And so we would say the hadith is authentic, this is what it means, and the ayah of the Quran is what the mas'ala is upon, that you have to wipe your hair, and you cannot wipe over your topi or your turban or your scarf or anything else for that matter. And Allah knows best. And that's the end of that hadith over there, and the end of the chapter as well. And we'll stop on this point here for tonight, inshallah ta'ala. Until next time, we end and we say, wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammad, subhanallahi wa bihamdihi, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.